The French Revolution. An amazing time for French history. It's one of the most debated, iconic periods of time of all time, really. Yeah, it was a really, 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 really long time ago, in a place not so far from here.
Dude, it was only like 300 years ago.
Yeah, which is still like a really long time ago. Like, we'd probably be dead if we lived it. Well, duh. Because it's a really
How?
long time ago. But yeah, the French Revolution. And that story starts now. In the beginning, France was basically poor. After helping America with their American Revolution, the country became bankrupt. People were hungry. The taxation was on the poor, who was obviously poor, so there was no way for them to pay it like that. And so the peasants wanted change. And our main character in this story is Louis the 16th, who was born on August 23rd in 1754 in Versailles, France, and was executed on January the 21st, 1793 in Paris, France. And
Just 9 months before, his wife, Marie Antoinette, was also executed in France by the guillotine. Louis the 16th had a thing for locks and hunting, and he paid much more attention to that than his own people, which is why his own people were dying, probably more than the animals he hunted.
exactly, or the locks that he picked.
The locks died.
The locks died, of course, of course. Unfortunately, he married Marie Antoinette, who was born on November 2nd, 1755, in Austria, and was executed on a great October 16th, 1793, in Paris, France. Unfortunately, again, she was a Habsburg, so she was a victim of incest on a really high level. She was rumored to be really dumb in a way, and she said let them eat cake as an insult because she was kind of rich and the poor were kind of poor.
Yeah, like the crumbs that gathered at the bottom of the oven would have been the cake she was referring to. She was not going to feed her own people cake because she didn't feed her people
She
anything.
didn't feed, or her husband. They neither one of them fed their people. They
True,
just
they just let them starve.
let them starve. And so because the country was in bankruptcy, the king said, we should do something about it. So he called representatives from each estate of living and called them the Estates General, or what Americans call it, the Estates General. The first state represent the king and the people of a large power. So like the king and the queen, basically.
The second estate was the nobility and the people of higher class who also didn't have to pay taxes. And the third estate was the people of lower class and peasants. So the poorest people that had to pay the most taxes.
Made
Because
no sense. Made no sense at all.
exactly, so logical. They did not have common sense, which John Locke wrote about all the way across the Atlantic in America.
But that's another video for another time.
Exactly.
And so Louis was forced to call a meeting because the economy was falling apart. But this third state felt like they weren't getting treated fair. So they wanted to vote individually, but they couldn't. So the third state broke off and formed their own group called the National Assembly.
Woo!
Woo woo woo. And they basically took matters into their own hands because they opposed King Louis the 16th and his nobles. As a result of that led to the fall of Bastille.
Um, the fall of Bastille was the fall of Bastille was basically the third estate who had had enough, and they decided to take out their anger on the king and queen by attacking the prison of Bastille. The death tolls were high, and the whole attack was influenced by French theorist Jean Paul Marat. Jean Paul encouraged the peasants to stand up for their overtaxation, and he encouraged them to go against the king by attacking Bastille. He was born on May 24th, 1743 in Switzerland and assassinated in Paris, France by Charlotte Corday, this crazy lady who decided to wait for him to take a bath and then stab him in his own home.
And that's what they did at the time, the French Revolution. That's why it was so iconic. Kill a man in his own
because,
bathtub.
everybody just killed everybody at that time.
Especially if they were in their bathtub. He also wrote newspaper articles and encouraged those act against those who imposed the idea of a republic, which led to the March on Versailles.
Versailles.
Oh, what? Really? Wow.
Because, it's French.
But we're in America. But on the March of Versailles, women marched from Paris to Versailles in order to confront King Louis XVI because, everybody was dying and their kids were dying. So they were like, yo, we're tired of this.
Obviously. So the women at the March of Versailles led the king and queen from Versailles to the Palace of Tuileries, where they kept them prisoner. This led to the flight of Varennes. After being transported to Paris, both Louis XVI and Marie Antoinette planned to flee the country in disguise.
That obviously didn't work.
Obviously not. They had to escape from their own people. That's how bad of rulers they were.
Horrible people.
True.
But eventually it didn't work, and it played a huge key role in his trial later in this time period.
True.
But back to the National Assembly. So they kind of had a Destiny's Child moment where they just kind of broke up, added some new members, let some members go, and they decided to change their name to the Legislative Assembly and war.
So basically, the National Assembly disassembles. What does this mean for the third estate? Well, not much. It just means they changed their name. But they did get a new constitution.
And they also changed some other things around. But they changed it back because, it made no sense. 14 hours in a day?
What?
Makes no sense.
Unacknowledged people represented the new parliamentary government known as the Legislative Assembly. So there we go.
Yeah. The attack on Tuileries Palace. The leaders of the government in Paris started to become frustrated with their military force and transformed the new Legislative Assembly. They ended up attacking the palace in which Louis and Marie had fled to seek help from the Legislative Assembly.
The attack of the Tuileries was led by radicals in search for social, economic, and political justice. They felt that in order to achieve this, they needed to kill the king, and therefore were determined to kill him. Thousands charged, thousands fought, and thousands died. Tragedy strikes France again.
This kind of seems like a recurring role at this time.
True.
But after that led to the trial of King Louis XVI. The people were fed up. So they tried King Louis with treason, he and his wife, and found them both guilty. Guilty. And so basically they cut their heads off on a guillotine and put them in a box and paraded it around the city. I know, right? Really, really great for this time period. Such an iconic time period.
And that basically led to the Reign of Terror, which was just a bunch of angry people killing the nobility and putting their heads on the stake.
Yeah, horrible. And think about how far we've come from the quote-unquote 300 years.
Well, I don't see anybody else around here marching around with heads on sticks.
No, not yet. So Not yet. Those participating in the French Revolution ran around and slaughtered nobles and anyone associated with the noble. So, peasants kind of killed peasants in that process, which was kind of weird because they were peasants.
Yeah, or if the peasants happened to feel like the revolution was not completely necessary, well, their opinion didn't matter because they'd be dead soon. The Constitution was rewritten and again referred to as a directory until Napoleon Bonaparte came into power and saved the French country.
Maximilien Robespierre was born on May the 6th, 1758 in Arras, France, and executed on July 28th, 1784 in Paris, France.
Nice Spanish accent, Kennedy.
I know, because we're in France.
Okay. Robespierre supported the Third Estate, and although he was against the death penalty, he believed it should be put into action for those that deserved it.
Irony.
He was against the death penalty, but he killed like thousands of French people and put their heads on sticks.
And he ended up getting killed himself.
True.
The
I
irony.
think his own head got on a stick, actually.
I think so as well. The irony of it all.
Crazy. He led the Jacobins, which was a radical group of the time, and he and Georges Danton essentially had the same beliefs, except that Danton opposed the revolution, thus getting him executed.
On April the 5th, 1784 in Paris, France.
94.
94, I'm sorry. He was born on October the 26th in France as well, and his followers were referred to as the Dantonists, and the Committee of Public Safety, in which he and Robespierre shared the same picture, with the exception of him not following the revolution. Look at that face. He has a face only a mother could love.
Like a butt with eyes.
Yeah, it's really sad. Look at, like the noses, the vision. It's really sad. But yet he was killed because he just wasn't as radical as Robespierre.
Hopefully they didn't put his head on a stick, because I don't think anybody wanted to look at that.
I don't think anybody did either.
Oof.
But by the end of the French Revolution, the Lord and Savior Napoleon Bonaparte came and ended all the conflict with the French Revolution.
Bonaparte transformed the French nation from a republic to a monarchy, associated more with the military. He was basically a dictator who called himself an emperor and focused more on military than politics, but even though many people viewed this as a bad thing, nobody could really complain because he was much better than Louis XVI, and he lifted France back onto their feet.
And that there is the end of the French Revolution in a nutshell. Thank you.